Hello, good afternoon and welcome to New Forest Morphs. Adam is joining me this Saturday, so thank you Adam for being our cameraman, and thank you also for all the lovely comments from the last films we put out yesterday on the mites and on the giveaway competition. There's a lot of love coming back, lots of congratulations to the winners from those that were going into the competition, and the good news is that we're moving up to 371, closer to 400. We're hoping to do another giveaway competition as soon as we get up to 400 subscribers, so keep those thumbs up and keep sharing with your friends. So today what I thought we'd do is just a couple of things. I was going to shed a little bit of light on what's been going on this morning. What I'm finding is that Jared is away this weekend from the facility. So I spent 3 hours this morning, and that's the reason why this is going up quite late, cleaning everything. But what I've noticed is that all the good husbandry that we've been doing over the week is starting to pay dividends. So Adam, why don't you come and join me, and I'll just explain what's going on here. So here's two little sheds. One of them's the perfect shed. You can see that. That's a perfect shed. No tears, beautifully done. It's like a little stocking. And this is one that's almost perfect. It's just got a couple of small little rips, but it all came out in one piece. There was only about one or two small little bits, and that was from two of the hatchlings. And one of them was from the new girls that we brought into the facility. So I was delighted to see those, and there was two other sheds. So let's go and find the other two other sheds. So if you want to come and join me, and I think it was, let me just check my numbers. So we had Athena, number 44, who was our pied girl, and she's in here. Come and have a look at her and see what she looks like out of shed. There she is. Can you see the shed in there, Adam? Look at that, perfect shed. So I'm well happy with that. So we've given her nice and clean, so she's looking incredibly beautiful. Would you agree, Adam? So having a new shed gives her a new paint job, as they call them. And what I like about it is that she hooked up a couple of days beforehand, before she went into shed. Now you'll notice that I've transferred the boys back into their rubs, and I've only kept one pair together. We had 6 pairs that we put together on Thursday, but the amount of water and the amount of hormones and everything else that was going on, I personally don't think it's wise to leave them in there for too long, sat in a lot of water and mess and poo and wee and all the other stuff. So I give them a couple of days, and then I have to use a judgment call to say whether it's important to leave them in there for a bit longer or whether to separate them. And there isn't a right and wrong, so it's an instinct, and you get it with more experience. So I made a judgment call that I felt it was appropriate to rest the boys, no more mating, other than one boy who hasn't hooked up yet, and I'll show you that in a second, and let the girls rest, let the boys rest. We had 4 hooks out of 6, so we've got maybe one that didn't hook and one that might still go, so that's good odds. So I think when they lock and they and you feel comfortable they've had a couple of days in that position, I think it's really wise to then rest your animals so that next week they're ready to go again. At least the males will be. We'll obviously rest the females, but the males will probably go again next week for us to different girls. So that was one of the clean sheds in there. So I was very pleased that the adjustment that we made to our humidity is now starting to pay dividends. So we did a video on humidity earlier in the week, and we made some twigging and adjustments. And if you do that husbandry, you'll see the difference, because your sheds become better as you get your humidity on point. And the other one that gave me a perfect shed, I'll just check who that was Daisy. So let's have a look at Daisy. She's in here, Adam. Leopard. There's a perfect shed down here. Can you see that? So she is a albino leopard, and look how gorgeous she is now. Look at that, Jared. Look at that, Adam. Now, since this morning, you see she's done a wee and a poo in the corner, and you often find that with a shed they often follow with a wee and a poo, as you know from the 12 days of Christmas. So what we'll do is we'll clean it up later, and then I'll just put those back in there. Just thought I'd just give you a little update on how the snakes are doing. All the other males are looking good and healthy. The ultra male went back into his rub, and he's in here, so let's go and have a look at him, see how he's looking. That's Titus. He looks happy, so he's gone back in. And then we also put back the banana boy, and he's in there. You can see him, and He likes a bit of moisture. He's wet his rub up a little bit more, but he's looking good. So we're going to rest him. Come on, little fella. He wants to come out and play. I think he likes you, Adam. Oh, isn't he lovely? He's gorgeous, isn't he? He's got to be one of my favourites. But he's actually looking to lock at the moment. He would want to breed, but I've got to hold him back because I want to preserve his energy for next week and make sure he feeds on Monday. So if you get males that want to... Come on, down you go, boy. Come on. If you get males that want to feed a bit more, you've got to make a judgment call and say, if he isn't a mature male and he goes to too many kills, you can tire him out. So sometimes you've got to override the instinct of an animal because the breeding instinct's so strong he could breed himself to death. But I don't want him. He's one of my favourite snakes. So I'm going to rest him and I'm going to try and get him to take another bit of food on Monday to get his stamina up so he's not exhausting himself. I'm kind of keeping it, always keeping something in the tank because we've got 2 or 3 months of breeding to go yet. And I don't want him to wear himself out too early. He's got to go the distance. So it's all about pacing that distance and making that judgment call. And the other one that did really well for us was Joker, our male clown. Now he's gone back into his rub. And there he is. Isn't that interesting? They've all increased their own humidity. Since this morning, Adam, I put in new bedding and I've come back a couple of hours later. All the boys, they're all having jacuzzis. They're all relaxing. They've done their business and they've decided to increase their own humidity. So maybe they are reconditioning themselves. But we'll check and do humidity tests to make sure they're not going too far. So that's important. So I think that's an example of, if you like, good husbandry. And as we are doing a daily blog, you're going to get real life experiences of what's going on, and hopefully that'll help you piece together the breeding process and how you make judgment calls. I just want to see if there's anyone else that was showing some interest. Now Phoenix, she's one of Jared's cinnamon girls. Look, she's bowl wrapping. Adam, you see the bowl wrapping? So that's interesting behaviour. She's building follicles. I'm going to put her back. And let's see what else is going on. I think we've got Toast. See what she's up to. We're hoping that she's going to give us an ovulation soon. She seems really happy and chilled, getting forever healthier, and she looks so good. I'm really pleased with her. We'll push her back. So that's all good, good, good. So today we're going to finish the concluding part of the Mite series. And before we do that, I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback on some of the messages I've had from our subscribers. So let's go back to the table, Adam. We'll just mention a few people before we get into the second part. So, first of all, 2 really excellent bits of news. I got a lovely message from JB, and that's JB Pythons, Royal Pythons. And I just asked him how his family's doing. Now this is the family that was suffering with COVID last week, and he gave me a lovely message today, and I wanted all my viewers to know that the family is on the recovery. They're coming out of isolation on the 19th of January, which is only a few days away, and they're looking forward to being able to get out and re-engage with their family at some point. But obviously with lockdown you can't go out and do that. Now the thing is, I think what they're planning, and I'm just wondering the inspiration where it came from, because I got a lovely message to say that they're planning to build their own reptile room, and I think it's going to be a 10 by 20, so we wish you well with that new project. So I think all the plans are going ahead and they're designing the reptile room that they would like, and we'd like you to keep us posted with that. The other thing we wanted to do is just send our love to your partner's mum, who is still in hospital, and our prayers are out for her to make a speedy recovery, and that she can be reunited with the family at the right time. So a lot of love coming here from New Forest Morphs. The other lovely message I got was from Angel, who responded to me yesterday, and he came back, I keep on saying she, sorry. Angel came back to me yesterday, and I just wanted to say how grateful we are for your love and for your support, particularly during some difficult times in your life. And we're sending out more and more love to you, Angel, and we hope that you can get that strength and be able to continue in your path and continue to be that great person that you are. So before we go any further, one of the things I wanted to do was actually go over the rest of the mite film. Now I think what I'll do is I'll get my little pointer out, Adam, and then we'll go to the TV and let's see what we can do here in terms of finishing the mites side. Now I've got here a website I was going to recommend here. Now if you meet the author, you've got Maria Healy here, and this is a company called Reptile Files, and I actually quite like it, and she's got some really good stuff here. So she gives us an indication of what's going on with mites. Now I think Jared said that yesterday the mites, as you can see here, look at all these mites all over the place, and all the mites that are in the ventral, the back of the snake, and that's where they gather. They find any crook or cranny to go in, and they multiply like unbelievably fast. So she's come up with some ideas. Now we did discuss the things I want to discuss today were the symptoms of how we can spot for mites. Now these are the things that she's suggesting. If your snake's starting to do more rubbing in the rubs than normal, then that's an indication that they've got an irritation on their skin. And so watch for any extra rubbing behaviour on your snakes. The second thing that you could find in your snakes is lethargy, meaning that they're very lethargic. So your snakes become very tired and lazy and just don't want to do anything. They're not motivated. And then another thing that you can find is when you go in the rub, if you see prolonged soaking, what do you think, Adam, the snakes could be doing when they jump into their water bowls?
Not too sure.
They're actually trying to drown the mites, is what they're trying to do. I mean, it's quite incredible, really. But if you ever see a snake going in a bowl for too long, there's a number of things that can happen, but often it's the prolonged soaking to watch out for. And the other thing is, if you get several snakes that are in their baths and they're not normally in it, that's normally a giveaway that the mites have just got a hold of your collection, and therefore you've got a problem. If it's the only occasional one that you get, it's not necessarily mites. It might be that it wants extra hydration. It might be that it just wants to cool off. So just because you see your snake in the bowl, it doesn't mean they've got mites, but I would definitely pick up the snake and examine it and check it really carefully. The other thing to watch out for is loss of appetite. They do switch off when they've got a mite infestation, because those mites are, there must be such a pain in the backside for these animals that they just get put off for eating. Even their eating goes down. Now you're looking for tiny black dots around the eyes, the ears and the vents, or the cloaca, which I've shown you up here. So that's the cloaca there. And then the other thing to look out for is tiny black dots on hands after handling them. And again, look at this person here. Can you see all the little dots on their hands after handling? Dot, dot. And what else have we got? We've got tiny black dots visible moving on the snake and or on the enclosure walls. And the other thing to watch for is ash-like dust, which is called mite poo, on the scales. So the mites poo on the snakes as well, and it's very dusty. So if you get this ash-like dust, that's another giveaway sign. Okay, so that covers the symptoms. Let's also move on to the causes. So what can cause mites? Poor hygiene. So by that means that if, for example, you're handling different snakes and you're not washing your hands between handling snakes, if one snake has mites, then you can have a problem, because you could pass it on to the other snake through your hands. And that's why it's important to really wash your hands regularly when you're handling snakes. And also other people. Just be careful who you allow in your facility and who you allow to handle your snakes, because the more people that handle your snakes, you know, if you have a situation where someone's been to a show and they haven't cleaned their hands, or they're carrying a mite, and you allow them into the facility, then that can be a cause. So contamination from an infected reptile besides a person, and also mites can come from the wild, being wild caught. So often they come when they catch the wild ball pythons. Now I'm not going to go over the treatments because I think Jared did a really good demo, but let's just come back to the ways that we can prevent mites from coming in. So what I've done is I've done various barriers of how we can stop these mites coming into our facilities. So let's just have a little look and see which ones we've got. So the first one, which we discussed yesterday, is to have a quarantine. So any new animals coming in, they go into your quarantine before they come into your facility. And usually it can be anything from 2 months, 3 months, depending on how you have to make a decision yourself as to how long you want to put your animals in quarantine. But like we've got our quarantine, we have one snake we've imported that Jared's treating for mites. And thank goodness we had a quarantine, because I would hated for that to come into here. So he's taking care of that, and I think the number of mites have reduced every treatment. They're coming down and down and down, and hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks it'll be completely clear of mites. Now, yesterday we showed you the cycle of the mite production, with the egg and the larvae and the nymph, and then the mature adults locking and then producing eggs. Now that normally takes 4 weeks. It takes 4 weeks to get into that. Now I think I've got a diagram here. So here we go. There's the diagram that I showed yesterday, and Adam, you might want to zoom in on that one. So there's a good reason why it's important to understand the cycle, because when you are trying to prevent them from I mean, our goal, when we have a mite situation, our goal is to eliminate all the breedable mites and all the babies, larvae, as soon as we can. Once we eliminate those from every aspect of our facility, in every rub, every snake, then we're on top of it, and then we've eradicated them. So if it takes 4 weeks for the mites to reproduce, if you treat them for 3 or 4 weeks and then suddenly there's no mites, you might think that you've sorted the problem. But these adults will lay so many extra eggs on the animal that when they hatch, you suddenly got a new generation coming forward. And when you've spent 3 or 4 weeks trying to kill off all those animals, those mites, suddenly they reappear, and you're pulling your hair out because you've just dedicated so much of your time to get on top of it. So the key is to have another sustained treatment period to kill the larvae here. We've got to kill these before they get out of control. So even if you kill the parents who have laid the eggs, and they can be hiding in lots of crooks and crannies, you've got to keep on treating for another 4 weeks. So I would suggest at least an 8-week treatment period to be absolutely sure that these mites don't come back. And if you do that consistently and regularly, you can get on top of it, and you can actually have a clean collection. And that's what I recommend. So understanding this cycle is very important. The other thing is, as I said, that some of these can become airborne, these nymphs. So if you can actually nip it in the bud at larvae stage, here, or if you see any eggs, the eggs are so microscopic, I'd be very surprised if you'll see the eggs, but the larvae stage and the this stage here, which is the nymph stage, and then as they come into this stage here, if we can take them out at this stage and they never get to the maturity stage, then they can never reproduce, and that's the key. So you hit the adults hard in the first 4 weeks, then you hit it hard again for the next 4 weeks, even if you can't see much, and that's the thing that I would recommend. So I hope that helped. So that's on that one. Now the other thing I wanted to say was, let's look at other techniques that we can adopt that will help us to get on top of these mites. Now I've got here, Jared did a nice demo, didn't he, yesterday, using the mite spray, and our viewers have come back with some other ideas of what they do, and I asked for some feedback. So I'm just going to go back and just cover some of the other things that treatments that other people are using. The one that fascinated me the most was Wayne. Now Wayne's come up with a suggestion to use Taurus live predatory mites, and you can get them in a bucketful from Amazon, and they cost about £46. And I had a look online to see what's going on there, and I read one of the reviews, and just to explain what's going on, these are larger mites that are called predatory mites, and they're a natural biological production. And you put those, you scatter them into the rub, and I think you put some on the animal itself. And that might sound counterintuitive to put more mites into an already mite infested rub, but I've been reassured that they go in there and they actually eat the small mites very effectively, and they pick them all off and they eat anything that's in the rub, and eventually I believe they die eventually. But the larger predatory mites are not dangerous to our snakes. So the idea is to use a biological, natural source of getting on top of it. and you can do a combined approach. So there's different ways of doing it. So some people like to do the chemical spray, and others like to go more natural. I suppose you've got to be careful doing a combined approach, because I'm guessing that the mite spray could kill the predatory mites. So the last thing you want to do is put in your predatory mites and then spray. I think you'd probably do one or the other, or you would stagger it. You maybe have the predatory mites going in there, and then once they've done their business, you would then follow up with the spray to make sure that you're going to get rid of any other issues that maybe not being picked up. So I've never done it before, so I think it's a very fascinating and certainly worth looking into before you commit to that money. The positive reviews were all 5-star. There was 1 or 2 negative reviews, and the only person I saw that had a negative review was somebody that got a bucket of them and half of them were dead, and he wasn't happy because he spent a lot of money, and they came, these live predatory mites, they weren't all alive. So that was the only negative review I could see on Amazon. But the positives said, the 3 positives are no chemicals, which means it's not going to be damaging to your snake. Secondly, it was less stressful to the snakes because it's more natural, organic way of dealing with them. And the third way was you could leave all your bedding and all your decor in situ. So if you go for a natural approach with predatory mites, then you don't have to then disturb everything. But if you go for a spray down, you've got to get all the decor out, you've got to get all the cocoa husk out, you've got to get everything in a clinical state, and you put paper down and then you spray, as Jad explained. So if you go the natural route, it could mean there might be less work in having to move things around with all your decor, your cocoa husk. But I've never done it, so, but it does say here from Wayne, he does it and he says it's very effective. So thank you, Wayne, for that idea and suggestion. Anyone that's considering it, please investigate and look at the pros and cons, and if you feel you want to have a go, give it a go and let me know how you get on. So that was a good suggestion. And then I think Kaz, she came up with an idea that they use, and they use something called I think it's called RDAP. I think it's called RDAP spray. Now, it's a very strong spray, and you should never spray it directly into your enclosure or your rub. And apparently the method that they adopt here is that they spray down let me have a look. So first of all, what you do is you spray down a sheet of newspaper, which is outside of your facility, outside the house. It's quite fumy, and you leave it to ventilate. And then once it's dried off and it's ventilated, you then tear up the paper and you put that little bit of paper, which carries that chemical, a small bit in the rub, I understand, and then apparently that can also kill the mites. But you'd never, and I believe this is correct, I'm no expert, I've never done it, but the research I looked at, they suggest that you should never spray that spray directly into the closure, and definitely not on the snake, because it's so powerful it could kill your snake. So you've got to treat, if you're going to use a very strong spray like that, you must go very carefully and cautiously, and maybe speak to someone that's done it before you go ahead and give that one a shot. But thank you, Kaz, for that suggestion. And let's have a look and see what else we've got here. Any other thoughts on treatments? Yeah, I think a lot of people were using similar treatments to what Jared and I use, which this is the one that we like, the Callington Mite Spray. So I think the other thing that people do is that they bathe their snakes as well to help get rid of the mites. So you can always run a nice 90-degree bath for them, let them soak in the bath, and that will help get rid of them as well. So there's lots of natural methods that you can do. You can pick them off with your thumb and hands. You can actually do an inspection. Now with the olive oil that Jared was suggesting, the olive oil doesn't get all of the mites off the body. So I know from experience and talking to Jared that he is actually literally, he's got very good eyes, Jared. He homes in on any mites and he removes them with his thumb and finger and gets them out. So you can literally pick them off if you can. So there's lots of different methods available to us. So prevention is better than cure though. So these are all curing methods that I've mentioned here, but it's much, much better to prevent. So these are the ideas I've got to prevent. Now, I think Rob on his channel gave me an idea of using olive oil. And I think what he did is on the rubs, he got some olive oil and he put it around the edge of the lip of the rubs. And that created a barrier. So if there's like a mite in your rub, If you don't want those mites to get out into the other ones, he would put a little bit of oil around the lid of the rub. So it creates like an oil slick around the edge. And then the mites, when they're crawling up the rub, they've got nowhere to go because the oil would just slow them down in their tracks. So I thought that was quite an interesting technique. The other thing that we could see, let me have a look. So they recommend obviously having a separate room and a separate building, obviously isolating the problem, separate enclosures, and restricted entry. So if you've got a room or facility and you've got people that want to come and see your snake, say you're selling a snake and someone wants to come and buy one off you and they want to see your facility, you've got to make a judgment call whether or not you allow them into your facility or whether you take the snake into your front room and show them the snake and let them handle that snake. Now it's hard because we naturally love each other and we want people to share our collections, but a lot of the top breeders I know actually restrict entry into their buildings. I mean, Jared and I have been to a couple of top breeders and we were looking forward to seeing their collections, but it never happened because they had a policy of actually bringing the snake out of their facility into the garden for us to have a look at the snakes before we bought them. And now, as purchasers, we should never insist on going into anyone's facility. You've got no right to be in there. But it's an etiquette thing where you have to respect someone else's collection. And certainly, if you are invited in, there's certain things that you should do to prepare yourself. Number one, make sure you've showered, cleaned and everything. Change your clothes. Make sure you don't go to a reptile shop or a reptile show on the way, because that's where you can pick up things. And you go in there as clean as possible yourself. And one facility we went into, we went to visit one particular facility and we had this. At the very entry to his facility, he had hand sanitizer, and he asked us to make sure that we sanitize our hands before we handle any snakes. Now that's a good move, isn't it? So there's someone that wants you to come into the facility, but they are being very cautious to make sure that there's no viruses or anything going on there. So that's an idea. Now, what other things have we got? So we talked about washing your hands, showering, changing your clothes. How many minutes have we got, Adam?
It's on 27 minutes right now.
We've got 3 minutes to wrap up. So wearing gloves as you're handling them is a good thing. And then using plastic bags when you remove the tissue with the mites, put the tissue in the bag, tie it all up, and then put that into another bag outside the facility, because mites can crawl out of tissue, out of bin bags and back in the system. Remove any decor or hides, bowls, and bowls with holes in them. So you get some of these natural looking bowls and they've got all these little holes in the side, and then mites can live in there. So you think you've got rid of them, but they might be in there. So that's why we like the doggy bowls and the baby bowls, the cat bowls. Couriers. Avoid couriers if you can. I'm not saying that they're particularly bad. I'm just saying that if you can go and inspect and pick up a snake yourself, much better. Couriers often have 5 or 6 snakes to pick up before they come and deliver. Now somebody else might have put a mite problem into the courier's vehicle that spreads into your snake, and you've suddenly got a mite issue. So where possible, I always say pick up yourself, or choose really good couriers that have high standards and they're very careful about what they're doing. Make sure you clean your facility and any dust regularly. Make sure you spray down any outside rubs and racks. Do regular deep cleans. Kill the breeder. I think any breeder mites have to be killed on the first cycle, and then you kill the second cycle. Slowly build up your collection. I mean, the biggest mistake you can make is buy 100 different snakes from all over the world all at once, and you've got the recipe for disaster there. So just slowly build the collection. Give each snake a chance to settle in. And your reputation. Ask about the reputation of the seller. Now, we don't have many seconds left, so I'm going to say part 2 is going to come very shortly. And in part 2, you're going to see a rock star, and you're going to see a little bit of dancing, and look forward to catching you on part 2. Bye bye for now.